Where are you, men of courage?
From Sherwood Pictures and the Kendrick Brothers comes Courageous Legacy.
I want to know what God expects of me. I don't feel like I started well. I want to finish well.
Celebrating 10 years of impact on fathers and families. Now remastered in 4K, including a new ending and bonus scenes.
I believe every father should step up and answer the call and say, I will. I will.
Courageous Legacy. Rated PG-13. Some material may be inappropriate for children under 13. In theaters September 24th.
This is a production of the Ultimate Homeschool Radio Network. Welcome to the Vintage Homeschool Mom Show. Your host, Felice Gerwitz, is an author, a publisher, and your radio show host. She will encourage, educate, and inspire you with answers to your most pressing questions from homeschool, marriage, parenting, and much more. Felice loves to equip moms to live a Christian life because every moment counts. Be sure to visit her website at MediaAngels.com. And here's your host, Felice Gerwitz.
Hey everyone, welcome. This is Felice Gerwitz with another episode of Vintage Homeschool Moms, and today we are going to talk about classroom creativity, of course, in the homeschool. This is episode 448, and you can find today's show notes at vintagehomeschoolmoms.com. Well, you know, creativity is more than just arts and crafts, yet with so many subjects we have to cover, classroom creativity can probably be the last thing you as a parent think is important, right? And it's probably on your list like never. So how are we going to instill creativity in our children when we have a lack of it in so many different ways? We are going to talk about that today with my special guest that I will bring on in just a minute. But first, I want to thank my sponsor, Courageous, the movie. After 10 years, the feature film Courageous, which has changed so many lives for the better, is back, and this time as Courageous Legacy. This movie has been remastered, and it includes a new ending as well as some bonus scenes. If you missed it first time out, you're going to want to catch this version. I saw the original movie, and it's another wonderful Kendrick's brother production. You can find more information at courageousthemovie.com. Well, today we're going to focus on the topic of creativity, and my guest is full of creativity if his books are any indication. I want to introduce you to Chad Stewart, also known to his readers as C.R. Stewart, the author of what is soon going to be a series of books that you're going to want to collect for your home library. Chad, welcome.
Thank you for having me. Very excited.
Yeah, I am too. And the series is the Britfield series, and you're going to be sharing some great information about creativity with the listeners today. But first, I want you to tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got started into this venture.
Yeah, I'll give a quick overview. I'm originally from Newport Beach, California. I was back east in New England, Wellesley, Massachusetts, to be exact, for 16 years. I was there for undergraduate and graduate work. I was a double major, British literature and European history, and then went on for my MBA and some grad work. And eventually got into banking and finance, which is interesting. And so I was working at a bank, and then I was working at a couple of investment firms. And it was about 11 years ago when I was down for a weekend seminar. And it was extremely boring. And I started to drift, and I started to doodle. So I simply doodled a circle, 3 lines, a basket, a boy and a girl, and I wrote The Boy and the Balloon. And that was it. Simple doodle. And for some reason, that idea just sparked my creativity. And I went home that weekend, and literally just on one piece of paper, I just started to see this whole story come together, and I started to outline it with just bullet points. And it was about Tom and Sarah. They were 12-year-old, 2 orphans. It takes place in present time England, and it starts up in Yorkshire, Northern England at Weatherly Orphanage. It's a terrible, horrible place. And Tom's been an orphan his whole life. And he's been at Weatherly for 6 years, and this is the year that he vows to escape. But he's not going anywhere without his best friend, Sarah. And somewhere along the lines, they commandeer a hot air balloon, but they're chased by the illustrious Detective Gowerstone. And that was kind of the gist of the story. And I thought, gosh, that sounds like a lot of fun. I was a British literature major. I lived in England off and on for 2 years, traveled the country extensively, so I knew it well. And I love England, and I wanted to share that love and that passion for England with my reading audience. So I sat down and started to write it, and had no idea how long it would take. I do come at it from a writing background. I used to write movie scripts, and I was writing a lot of nonfiction books, but I never wrote a novel and had no idea about young adult novels. And lo and behold, 4 years and 2,500 hours later, I had produced book one, Britfield and the Lost Crown. And it was around that time that I started to see this thing as a series. I didn't at the time. Some authors, they see the 3 books or the 5 books, they see the end. Right. They know how each story is going to go. I really just kind of took it one book at a time, but I thought, I've got really a great story here. And I feel like even just book one is this wonderful introduction into this royal mystery and what is Britfield. And so really from the concept to officially launching nationally in August 2019, it took over 10 years, 10 years of hard work, patience, dedication, putting together the right team, putting together an extensive business plan, marketing plan. I mean, for us, this was a huge and massive endeavor, but it was also a long game, something that was going to consume the next really quarter of a century of my life. And it's going to be 7 books, 7 movies. And so we released in August 2019 with great success and became a relative, I was going to say instant, but a bestseller, and have sold that. We have now sold more books than, I think, something like 97% of all published books will sell in a lifetime.
Wow.
And that's over, I think, 50 or 100 million books. So it's one of the most awarded books in children's fiction. And we actually, one of my favorite awards is Parents' Choice Gold Medal and Mom's Choice Gold Medal. So that's for all your moms out there. So it's just,
right.
It's been amazing. The feedback has been amazing across the nation from children, from parents, from teachers, from librarians. Our youngest reader has been 7. Our oldest reader has been 93. And we've had a lot of 12-year-olds that have read the entire 384 pages in 5 hours, which to me is always the greatest compliment, that they can sit down and literally just finish it. And it's been a whirlwind, and it's been amazing. We kicked off a national school tour back in 2019. We ended up driving 9,000 miles. We visited 23 states. We presented at over 180 schools to more than or around 40,000 students. And this was everything: public, private, Christian, Catholic, homeschool. Homeschool groups. We were on a homeschool farm in Carson, Nevada. We were at one of the top prep schools in LA, where all the movie stars go, in front of over 400 students with a movie-sized screen behind me. Really liked that, and got all the way to New Orleans, Louisiana, all the way up to through Mississippi, and all the way up to Memphis, Tennessee. So, and unfortunately, we were going to continue with the tour, but it was in 2020 March that we had to stop it. And so since then, we've actually kicked off. Last year, we kicked off our virtual author visit, and that's been fun. That's been great. Yeah, we were able to reach out to Indiana, Florida, Georgia, and we're now going abroad. We've actually got a school booked in England and some others coming up. So it's been amazing. So it's a 7-book series. It'll be 7 movies. We're in the development stage of the first movie, so if we have time, we can talk about that. We launched Britfield and the Rise of the Lion this year, July 4th. Kind of patriotic, and that takes place in France. And then the rest of the books, book 3, which I'm just finishing now, is called Britfield and the Return of the Prince. That'll take place in Italy. And then book 4 will take place in Eastern Europe and Russia. Book 5 is in Asia and China. Book 6 is in South America. And then book 7 will come back to the United States. And in each book, Tom and Sarah grow by 1 year. And so it's really wonderful. And I know you can relate to this better than anyone, that from 12 to 13 is like a decade, and from 12 to 14 is like 2 decades, because it's very different at that age. And so as an author, it's a lot of fun, because as they grow, they mature and they're more challenged and they take on more responsibility. And so now with book 3, which I'm so excited about, and they're in Italy, they're a lot more independent, a lot more mature, and that's a lot of fun. So it's kind of a quick overview of this massive program. We also have the 83-page study guide. Right. And it's perfect. Perfect for teachers, perfect for homeschoolers. You can actually teach it chapter by chapter at school or in the classroom. And so,
and you'll have these with each of the books that come out, the study guides.
We will. Yeah. We're still developing book 2. So it's like we launched the ebook and the paperback, and then we'll have the hardcover for Christmas, and hopefully the audio for book 2, and then the study guide. So all those things just kind of take some time.
Yeah, I know. I was going to say you're too busy to sit and write, because sometimes that's what you have to, someone said, how did you ever write? And I said, you put glue on the seat and you don't move. It's hard.
You write 1 page at a time and 1 hour at a time.
Right. Give yourself a deadline and tell yourself you can't move. So, I know, and it's difficult too. Well, lots of great information here, and as I was sharing with you before we went live, that I was talking to my grandkids about this. I read book 1, and I'm in the middle of book 2, and really enjoyed it. And I think when I was looking back, I had about 6 or 7 emails from your company asking for an interview, and I never do interviews unless I actually read the book, which means I have to have time to read the book. And so, I was a little bit more cautious because I'm cautious with my audience. And I, thank you guys for being with me all these years. So many of you have been since the beginning. And so I was sharing with my grandkids, they were over this weekend, and I said, you know what, there's like nonstop adventure and edge of your seat, and these kids can't get a break. And they're like, Grandma, that's what we like. And then I turn around and the books are gone. I have them on ebook. So, it's a good thing I can finish book 2, but it's really a great thing because now we'll be able to talk about it. And then a lot of times, parents will use these as read aloud. So you're going to be really encouraged, friends, as you're listening and reading these books, because sometimes, and I think I sent you a couple of questions that you answered, because I didn't want, I don't like personally to read books that have a lot of undertones and things, but what you will find is it's good, clean fun, and also that the kids are going to learn a ton. I've never been to England, but I felt like I was there. You were in some really fun places that the kids could, talk about, and you lived it with them. So the scenery's great, and it's going to be a lot. It's almost like the kids are going on a world tour as they're going through this. This is what I'm seeing, maps and everything. Plus the book contains maps, so that's great too. Well, you are going to share your love of creativity and how important that is for kids just in general. My listeners know that I harp on this on occasion, and you guys know this, but I always talk about giving your kids time to think. Sometimes we're so focused on, okay, we've got to get in college. Out of my 5, 3 went to college, and did great, lots of awards, and a couple of sports kids who still got academic scholarships. So what is something that you feel is key on the topic of creativity?
Yeah, it's a broad subject, and I've been fascinated with creativity for over the last decade, and started to do quite a bit of research into it. And I have found that, number one, as a nation, United States and even globally, that we are in a creativity crisis, and have been for the last 20 years. And we can get into that with some stats if you want to, which kind of was confounding to me. And I think this whole thing was really kicked off by watching this TED Talk by Sir Ken Robinson. It's a 2006 TED Talk, and it says, the title of it is, Are Schools Killing Creativity? And I thought, wow. And I loved it. It's just an 18-minute TED Talk, and this guy knocks it out of the park, and he hits home, and he resonates with everyone. And I thought what's so fascinating about that particular TED Talk is that they've had thousands of TED Talks throughout, I guess, the last 20 years. And we're talking best-selling directors, actors, authors, you name it. And Sir Ken Robinson 2006 TED Talk was the most downloaded and shared TED Talk in their history. And you have to ask yourself why. And that's what really kicked all this off, and the importance of creativity and how that is being really moved out of the classroom. And where on the other side of it, all my research and stats, this is, globally, is that creativity right now is the single most important subject, skill, and topic of this decade, of this generation, and of this year. Just to give you some examples, I think it was 2019 to 20 on LinkedIn. Creativity was the most desired skill set. Creative applicants are preferred 5 to 1 at a lot of the tech. And this is across the board.
Wow,
it's not. I mean, it's in all the different fields. People that play music or musical instrument, especially at the tech companies, are preferred 10 to 1. Because they know creative applicants, and people that have a creative background, especially like in music, are better leaders, better at brainstorming, better under crisis, can think outside the box. They're the type of people that you want as leaders at your company. So you could have this whole accounting, engineering, mathematics background. That's great. I can put you at a seat, plug you in, and you'll do what you're told. But you won't be inventing products. You won't be leading leading us out of a crisis. You won't be coming up, and they're calmer. And that's what I was saying. They handle crisis better. And so stat after stat after stat. And part of this information is based on, Harvard Business School journals, science journals. Adobe did a massive survey, which we have tons of this information on our Britfield Institute website about creativity. So it's coming from all the top resources. And it's so funny. So everyone is admitting out there, and it's kind of scattered. It's starting to pick up, but it's like you'd find these unbelievable articles out there about the importance of creativity, or how we're in a creativity crisis, and how it's so important to bring creativity back into the classroom. So important for college students to have a creative background across the board, no matter what field you're in. And yet it's like one or two of these articles a year. It's just
right.
like,
so
what's
the solution, right? Everybody's really good at pointing out the problems, but not the solution.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Right. And so that's kind of been my passion with the book and the book series. On one side, you have, Britfield Lost Crown, you have the 7 books, the movies, the merchandise, the sort of world tour. On the other side, you have the Britfield Institute, which is our nonprofit. And that's really just to bring creativity back into the classroom, focused mostly on Title I schools. Our site has a ton of free research and resources for teachers. So there's nothing, it's not anything in it for us. It's not like we're trying to raise money from it. It's what we're doing. It's what we're giving back. We're giving back to the teachers, we're giving it back to the classrooms, back to the children. We have workshops, we have writing workshops, entrepreneurial workshops, marketing workshops, all these different things and programs that we're implementing now and rolling out over the next, 3 to 5 to 10 years. And so, our goal is really, you want to change education, you do that. You do it one student at a time, you do it one classroom at a time, you do it one school at a time. And, and we're not alone. There's programs out there. There's other people that get this, if you will. Mm-hmm. STEAM went from STEAM to STEM, where they brought in the arts. I know in North Carolina, there's a district out there that's bringing the 4 C's back to the classroom, which is creativity, collaboration, communication, and critical thinking. And we're at the forefront of this. We are in a crisis, and if this isn't solved, it's like we'll be a third world in the next 5 to 10 years. And I'm not saying that jokingly, because creativity is the most important skill. Creativity is at the core of everything that you do. All those other pursuits are noble, whether it be law or teaching or all those things. But you have to have that creative background, that creative spark. And we're all born creative. A lot of us don't feel it. And I think creativity gets educated out of us. And if you have time, when we get into the stats, I can share some of the really interesting stats that caught my eye about what happens through the process of education in school.
Right. So, because our focus is homeschoolers, and a lot of us feel pressure because, as I used to joke with my kids when they would say, do I have to? And I'd say, look, I can't blame your teacher because I am your teacher. So The buck stops here. And so we want to be able to cover some of the things that are important that they have to have, if you will, because a lot of us live in states where they have some requirements. I'm in Florida, so we have a little bit more flexibility, but still. So, we can make sure that our kids are exposed and, as I say, give them time to think, have time to delve into some of these things where they may not have as much of a chance in a traditional classroom setting.
Absolutely.
And so I was on your website, and he does have on that Britfield Institute, it's .org. Chad has a lot of things. There's a lot of resources on there, and there's a book you can download that has some creativity information in there for you. And also his website is Britfield, and that's with 1 T, BRITFIELD.com. And there is an official Britfield Facebook page that has information such as some of the classes that they have coming up. So those are some things that you can look at with your family and see what you can do. And I think that's my biggest question here is, okay, so we can see, without going into all the stats, but we can see that there is a real need and there is a crisis in education. But how do we get from point A to point B? Especially, let's say, when we're looking at college entrance and we're looking at SATs and ACTs and SATs. We want our kids to do well, and there's programs out there. One of my podcasters, College Prep Genius, give Jane a shout out. She has a great class that, takes kids through that. But, how do we include creativity ideas, if you will, in our homeschool, especially if our kids tend to not be, it's not something that makes them tick.
Yes, absolutely. And it's great too to be talking to your audience, which is specifically a homeschool audience. So you're already like way ahead of it. In fact, I was doing an interview yesterday saying that I actually find homeschool kids to be the most well-rounded, well-educated children, students, or adults out there now. Of this generation.
Well, thank you.
I've had a lot. I mean that honestly. Yeah, and it's for a lot of reasons. I find that they're grounded. They listen very well. They're good communicators. They're inquisitive, and they just generally have leadership qualities. And I have seen this firsthand, anywhere from a 10-year-old to a 20-year-old. And so I think starting at a young age is fantastic, and creativity can be very simple about. It's two things really, and one is it's environment and opportunity. Because especially the younger the child is, especially around 10 to 12, that's such a vulnerable age, but it's such an extraordinary age where they're so eager to learn, and their mind is ticking, and they're not afraid to do anything, and they're not afraid to ask questions. And so by providing as much opportunity as you can, and again, too, none of this has to do with money. You're like, oh, things are tight, or we don't have the money. There are so many different resources online, at the library, things you can do. I think when a child has an interest, whether it's building or building blocks, painting, coloring, you get them coloring crayons, you get them paper, you get them the paints. And if they burn out of it after, a month, that's fine. You know what I mean? And on to the next thing. What you want to do is you want to be giving them opportunities so they can start to see and feel exactly what it is that they want to do. If they're fascinated with the ocean, take them to the beach if you're close by, or a lake. You know what I mean? If they love exploring, take them out hiking in the local hills. It's not hard to do. If they're really interested in architecture, take them down to the city and start walking the streets with them. An hour a week or an hour a month, and start examining the buildings, or get a local book. On the architecture. I'm obviously thinking of Chicago because it's kind of grand, or New York, but I'm just saying, even if it's a small hometown, I mean, whatever it is, or get out of it. I mean, most people or most homeschoolers are within 2 to 3 hours of a major city, if not in a city or not on the outskirts of it. And what I'm saying about all of this is it's about environment. It's about experience. It's about touching and feeling and hearing and smelling, taking them out for a picnic once a week to a different place, taking them down to the beach, taking them sailing, taking them to the museum, taking them to here, taking them to there. Those are some of the things that you must do. It's not a question of you will do. You must do these things. You must give them as much of this opportunity to experience things. And I'll give you some examples in a minute. Other things are like the creative exercises. And yes, our website, we have 33 creative exercises. It's an ebook, free. You can download it. That gets the engine going. Do a creative exercise once a week, once a month. We have, I think it's 11 or 13 creative games that you can start playing with your kids, depending on their age. One of the most favorite things that I absolutely love to do, and I've done this so many times at some of the schools that I've been to, is we do a writing exercise. And of course, they're not graded on this, and I get them up, and this is obviously for more of a classroom, but you could do this at home. And the premise is that we've been tasked. We have a budget, film budget. We've been tasked to write a movie. And we need to come up with the movie, and we need to write the script, if you will, the story. What's the general story? And so in a classroom, I'll start knocking it around. What are some ideas? What do you think would be a fun idea to make as a movie? Romantic comedy? Do we do a history? And you start talking. And so all of a sudden, you've got a classroom or a group of kids engaged, and they're thinking, and there's no wrong answers. And what are they doing? They're collaborating. What are they doing? They're critical thinking. What are they doing? They're communicating. So you're hitting all 4 C's within a simple exercise within 5 minutes, and their brain's firing. And you're like, okay, so we're going to do an action adventure. Great. So where does it take place? And I have a real simple 1-page outline of sort of a typical movie structure. It's like the beginning scenes, and then it's the inciting incident, and it's plot point 1, meaning something happens. It's the midpoint, right in the middle of your story, and then plot point 2. So it's really simple. And I'll spend about 45 minutes or an hour. And I was at one school classroom. It was really interesting too. It was great. I think it was a charter school, and I think it was like 11 to 14. So it was a really nice variety of background and ages. And we got about halfway through it when I had to go. It's like about an hour, but it was fun. And it's not about necessarily finishing it. Although if you're a homeschooler, you could actually finish it.
Right.
What if you were to write a new story every other month with your kids or with your child? And again too, you don't have to write all the dialogue. You know what I mean? Or anything. You can just start to outline it, or you can just start to write the scenes. And what you're doing is you're just getting them to think creatively. And they're thinking critically, and you can ask them questions. Well, if they're there, what time of the year of it? Because if you're doing a summer trip in Colorado and it's in the summer versus the winter, it's going to be very different, right? Snow, snowstorms, slipping, ice, cold, and so it's just you're getting them to think, and you're getting them to just come up with ideas, and you're getting them used to asking questions and collaborating and communicating. So that's just, I'm giving you that as an example, but that's one exercise that I absolutely love to do. Or come up with a product. Is there something you can think of that needs to be done? If you were to create any product, what would it be, or what's needed out there? And then start working on it. And again, too, it doesn't have to have an end goal. You don't actually have to produce the product. You don't have to finish the story. You don't have to finish the movie script or the book. It's great if you can, and it can be an ongoing project. It's like, hey, this semester we're writing a novel, or we're writing an action adventure novel with my kids, or we're writing a movie. A romantic comedy or a drama, or a historical drama with my kids. Why not? How fantastic is that? And it's just like, I can guarantee you they will get more out of that one exercise than they will out of practically everything that you're doing and teaching, whether it's the languages, whether it's the mathematics, whether it's all the requirements. Okay, that's fine. That's the foundation. Some of them you have to do. Most of them, you don't have to, or irrelevant. But the one thing that they will get the most out of, that they'll have the most fun, and it will actually benefit them the most, will be these kind of creative exercises. This is guaranteed.
Have you been looking into our home? Because I wrote every one of my kids wrote. And so I wrote some nonfiction, and then my daughter was 12, and she decided she was going to write a book. And then she decided we were going to write a book, and it was a novel that she had an idea for. And I said to her, Christina, I don't know how to write a novel. And she was like, Mom, we're homeschoolers. We can figure it out.
Yeah,
so that was back when I had 2 kids, and she is now a mom of 8 and has, these are the grandkids that were over I have the boys over one day, and then they go home and the girls come over the next day. And it's a little bit calmer with the girls, but, cause they're in their teens, but we have such a good time, and they were telling me books that they write. So part of it is they're seeing what we're doing, right? So,
yes.
Parents will always say, well, how are your kids, doing whatever? And I said, it's because, I'm doing it. I needed some quiet time one time. They were, buck stops here. They're home all the time. So I started reading my Bible in the mornings, and then all of a sudden I look and they're reading their Bibles. I'm like, what? I didn't tell them to do that. It's characters caught, not taught. The other thing I noticed when you were talking about some of the exercises and that you were sharing with us is that when children are afraid, and I think that's one of the keys to homeschooling, is our kids are fearless. In a way, it's really a good thing, and sometimes it is not.
Sure.
For example, my kids weren't afraid to make mistakes. And when I first started homeschooling, I had the teacher mentality, because I tell parents, I said, if you've never had any educational background, you'll be a better homeschool parent, because sometimes we try to create the school in the home. And I remember being in this huge group of kids, it was a homeschool activity. We were at the fire station, and the police were there too. I don't remember exactly why we had the policemen and the firemen. But my son, who had a little bit of a speech impediment, is raising his hand, and I kept gently pulling his hand down, like, no, you don't want to ask a question with like 200 kids. And he was like really insistent and held his hand up. And I think I still remember to this day, he's almost 40 now, but he was 5 at the time. This was how traumatic it was in my life. But he asked the cop, he said, hey, if you're a policeman, can you give another policeman a ticket if he's speeding? I'm thinking, that's what everybody needs to know, right?
That's awesome.
And of course, everybody kind of laughed, and he's like looking at everybody kind of like, it came out clear, so the guy understood. And he goes, it's a great question. Never been asked that. My son looked at me
Love
like
it.
So, that was one of the things that I noted early on in our homeschool journey, that they weren't afraid because there's no dumb questions in home. At the home, they'll ask things, and we don't just say, oh my gosh, you're wasting time. My kids learned not to ask me a lot of questions because we'd go on a lot of different segues, and so they told me school took longer, but I'm a student and I love to learn, and my kids got that as well. They love learning. So one of the things I want to say to the parents, this is something that is important. I know we're freaked out. The kids get evaluated or take standardized tests at the end of the year. Even though I had some bright kids, I had some that struggled. We always did. And if your area allows for it, we always did evaluations. The reason was there wasn't that pressure at the end of the year. The kids could be evaluated, meaning they're looking through, they're pulling aside some of their best work, and they have, a certified teacher who looks at it, signs off, send it to the county or however you work your homeschool journey. But that allows for a lot more creativity and flexibility. If you're having to take that standardized test, you're teaching to the test, which is part of the problem with educational systems, because then how do you rank? I love those signs that say, we're a number one, and I'm thinking, yeah, and your poor kids are probably stifled in education as well, because it's difficult. So, a lot of the things that you mentioned are wonderful, and it's something that, again, is allowing kids to experience their interests, right, Chad? I mean, that's what you're focused on here is, once they're interested in something, that's just going to take off, isn't it?
It will, and you're planting those seeds when you're younger. And I'll give just a couple of quick examples. And one is I'm continuing on my master's in science and PhD at the Druckard School up in Southern California.
Is this your spare time? Is that what?
Yes, this is my spare time. But I say this to say that it was very interesting. I was tasked with a lot of things. It was really cool too. I wrote my first case study with my professor. He's a Harvard Business School teacher that was recruited, and so obviously very, very smart. And so I got to co-write and co-produce this or publish a case study. It was actually on a major amusement park that does films. I can't tell you the name, but we started this whole and they're very focused on creativity. And so I was doing a lot of my research on creativity, and we started to do this amazing survey of a lot of the alums, and so many of them are successful, but they're across the board as far as every industry you can imagine. And so, it would start with interviews, and I'd contact each one of them. I'd be asking them some questions and stuff. None of it was pointed. I had no idea what the end result would be, but the three top skills that across the board came up for all of the industries. Like, what is the most important thing in your industry, or for a manager or for a leader? Number one was creativity. Number two was storytelling. And number three was communication. Isn't that interesting? And we're talking like, people that were working at a recruiting place, a doctor, nonprofit. And I didn't point the questions. I had no idea. And I say that to come back to what I was saying earlier about writing. And you're sitting there saying, well, my kids don't want to be a writer. Not everyone needs to be a writer. I'm not really talking about writing. I'm talking about storytelling. And storytelling is one of the single most important skills, along with creativity, that your children will need and have for the rest of their life. If they're working for a marketing company, they're telling a story. If they're managing a company, then they're telling a story about the product, or they're telling a story about their what they need to do over the semester. If you're a doctor, you're telling your patient the story, in a sense, of what they found out, what they need to do. But the point is that the better you can articulate the story is the difference between failure and success. And so storytelling, that thread of storytelling, a beginning, a middle, and an end, to not exaggerate, to not overemphasize, but to be very concise with your words, with communicating, with telling a story, is one of those important skills. And I want to kind of come back, because people, I talked a lot about writing, and I'm a writer, and it's like, well, of course you're thinking that's important. And I'm really, what I'm talking about is storytelling, the importance of storytelling. But like, if you're giving a job interview, guess what? You're telling a story about yourself. And the better you're up against, especially now with competition, 1 out of 100 applicants, 1 out of 200 applicants, what's going to make the difference besides your background? It's you. and it's how you present yourself, and it's the story. So tell me a little bit about yourself. Oh, well, I don't know, but and you're fumbling around versus saying, that's a great question. Yeah, I was born so-and-so, and I remember when I was 6 years old, I always wanted to. And it's like you're clean, you're crisp, and you're telling them a story, and you're captivating them. And that's the difference between failure and success. And so I really want to sort of emphasize that. But what was your question? I'm sorry.
No, that was, well, the point I was making is your interest, you've got to get to where the kids are and their interest. And one of the things I kind of want to piggy, which you pretty much answered, but one of the things you talked about too was, communication. And that's really important. I think sometimes as parents, we don't want to sit there and let them tell us everything. This is why grandparents are important to the story here, and aunts, uncles, extended family, whatever. But when the kids come over, which is, we're a big Italian family, so I'm interested in your book on Italy because I've been there. But whenever, everybody comes together at least once a week, we'll have the big meal and everything. And kids are in the pool and, finally everybody settles down. But at the end of our meal, usually the kids are hanging on my husband. And he's so open and most of the time but grandpa, I want to tell you that, and he listens, he's a listener, and they will tell him all kinds of things. And my other son noticed, he's in his 20s, and he was saying, Dad, I can't believe you're sitting there letting him tell you this, some fiction account of some, movie they saw or a book they read, and he's like, well, I find it fascinating, and I don't know if he really does or not, probably does. But the point is that they have someone who is going to sit there and listen to him. And I'm not kidding. He's got like 2 or 3 just hanging out, and they're listening to the other person talk. And I think that's important as well, that we as parents need to be listeners and give our kids time to articulate. It's kind of hard when you're around them 24/7. You may need a little bit of that quiet time. But that is another important part, and also allowing them the time to delve into the things that they enjoy. If they don't want to write or can't write, nowadays there are so many different things that they can do. They can use, voice to text. You can do it on an app on your phone. My son, the youngest now, who is a senior in college now, but I remember when he did the little Lego stop motion videos, and they were hilarious. He'd take these pieces and move them, kind of like the clay kind of a thing. And I was a smart aleck, so I kind of dubbed it one time, and he didn't think it was funny at all, but I thought it was hilarious, like the ones hitting him on the head, and they're the little, Star Wars. He wanted to put it on YouTube, and I'm like, oh my gosh, you're killing me here, because all I'm thinking is copyright. I'm thinking, okay, we've got Star Wars, infringement on that. Disney owns them, going through all of them, and, never mind Legos. But yeah, he worked on that forever and was really, I thought, he's going to go into computer science, and he's kind of going into engineering. But, the point is that this was something he was interested in, and he didn't care if his brother, made fun of him, and his sister's like, come on, we got to go play or practice or whatever. It was something that was intriguing to him. And, it's something that we, whether we think it's playing with Legos or whatever that is, we may think this is the biggest waste of time in our minds, right? But it isn't. The kids are allowed to explore and come into their own, and then you don't know what's going to happen in the future. It's something that is going to stay with them, and it's another important little skill set that they have. Because without creativity, you can't think on your feet. You can't come up with those solutions. And that's one of the things I think people miss, especially in the homeschool circles. There were all of these books on critical thinking. And I remember looking at them and going, these are the dumbest things I've ever seen. Why would anyone, and they're bestsellers, don't get me wrong, because parents want to just pick up something and be able to use it. Without having to take any time and effort. But hopefully after listening to you today, Chad, you've inspired them to take some time to encourage them to, incorporate this into their homeschool, and also with some of your, the information you have in your books. So if they want to buy the book, I know it's probably available everywhere, right?
Yeah, but it's you can go through Britfield. If you go through Britfield.com, you'll actually get a signed book and with a bookmarker. And we won't be doing that much longer because we'll be transitioning it off into something else. But no, and then Amazon is always the best place. I did want to say a couple of things. We had a couple of minutes, but because it really solidifies what I was talking about. But when I was younger, I grew up in Crotomar, California, and or Newport Beach, and it was great. I had a great childhood growing up, but I loved building blocks, and I loved Legos, and I loved Lincoln Logs, and I was given those, and I had so much fun, and I could sit there and entertain myself for hours. And then we had a neighbor next door. She had this huge yard, and she let me build a fort. And, it started with a couple of pieces of wood, and then scrounged a few more pieces of wood. And pretty soon it had 4 walls, and then it was 6 feet high, and it had a second story. And it was amazing. And so years later, by 1819, I got a job working for a major developer, and was working on big, building houses. And when I was back in New England, started in an architectural firm and a building firm, and did that for about 8 to 10 years, which put me through college. And we built some amazing houses. And I'm using it as an example of from building blocks to corporation. And it was from that. And there's another great example. When I was 12 years old, at the elementary school, we had a writing assignment or an assignment from the class. It was kind of most of our grade, and it's like we had to write a book. And it's like at 12 years old, you're like, oh my gosh. And I think it had to be like at least 20 pages. And it's like, how do you even start with that? But you could have pictures. Mm-hmm. And so I learned early, you write about what you know, and you write about what you love. And I love James Bond movies. And so my first official book was James Bond, Eat Your Heart Out. And I was a 12-year-old spy working for the British government that was tasked with capturing this villain that had just escaped in Switzerland. And so here we are, almost 40 years later, and I'm writing a European fast-paced adventure series called Britfield and Lost Crown. And I really do count it to that. I didn't write that and then after I was done thinking, oh my gosh, I want to be a novelist, but it stuck. And the subconscious has an interesting way of keeping things that it wants, right?
It does.
And so anyway, this is just a couple of examples personally in my life by having that opportunity. By you don't know what you want to do until you do it. You know what I mean? And so it's like like I said, maybe you're like, oh, I've done that. And I was like, we got them the coloring and the painting kit, and it's like now it's up in the attic. Okay. Well, at least they know what they don't want to do, and they've had that experience. And it's just like, for the sake of what, I don't know, $50, $100. It's like, whatever.
Right.
But just give them those opportunities. Anyway.
It's so funny because this, of course, gives me like 3 more ideas. But like you were talking about your building, my husband is a builder. And so sometimes things creep into the yard that shouldn't be here. Or he puts them off to the side. So it still looks really nice when I look out the front or the back. But we were studying fulcrum points and catapults and things. And we had our little science, activity, and the kids did it, and it was paper. Well, the next thing I know, my son said, "Hey, Mom, can I build a catapult?" And I said, "Sure." So this is the 3 younger ones. And so the first 2 were tame compared to the 3 younger ones. The 3 younger ones, we learned early on, you could not say, yes, you can, because you never knew what they would actually do it. I go out there and, the youngest runs in, "Mom, come see this." He had, I don't know, some huge piece of wood. I don't know dimensions. I would call it a 2x4, but it was bigger than that. And he had this thing that I swear was going to kill them. I don't even know how, but he managed to, we have a pond in the front too. So he managed to catapult this thing. And we, back in the day of early videos we can't find that video. It must've been an old cell phone. But he built this huge contraption, and he works construction with my husband. And whenever we need, we always tease him because he always has these side projects. When we need money, we borrow it from Nick. But, and then the youngest, one of their free time activities, the middle daughter. So I have boy, girl, boy, girl, boy. God knew what he was doing, but not where they could room together. So Annie came running in and said, "Mom, this free time you give us to explore? Well, you better check Mike out." He was on the watershed in the back because we have a well system, and he was jumping off and rolling like he saw that in a movie. You know how you jump off the roof and you roll? It wasn't that high of a roof, but still. And so, he's doing this little shoulder roll thing. He did not get hurt. So now he is going to be in the Army when he graduates. And just jumped out of helicopters. And that was one of the
funny.
things. Yeah. So you never know, some of this stuff.
Yeah.
The other thing too, your inspector in book 1 reminded me of Sherlock Holmes. I don't know if that was intentional.
Oh no, it was. Yeah.
Was
I was inspired by 2 people for Detective Gowerston. It was Sherlock Holmes and James Bond.
Oh,
So
right.
He has that. In that first entrance, he has that
Right.
cool, crisp outfit, and
Yeah.
he looks more like a movie star, right? Than a
Right, right.
detective. So he's all cool and calm, yet he's always thinking 5 or 10 steps. Yeah, I love the Sherlock Holmes things. I thought that was fascinating.
Yeah.
So,
Some of the comments, that he made, interesting. Like you could see the wheels turning. Well, Chad, this has been delightful. Before we leave, I want you to share, when is this movie coming out? And it's exciting that we're not only reading a book, but know that there's movies that are going to be, because, a lot of times you read books and you're like, oh, they should make a movie out of this book. So.
Yeah, and we've heard that. I'd say about 90 to 95% of the feedback for Britfield and Lost Crown, elicited, but just feedback is like, it reads like a movie. I thought it was in a movie. It was so funny. I was doing a podcast with this 12-year-old girl. It was so cool. I was at their school, and the mom says, "Hey, my little girl has a podcast. Would you be on it?" It's only like, it's like 5 minutes. And I'm like, I'm like, absolutely. And it's so funny. I mean, she's knocking it out of the park. She's got like 1,000 subscribers. That's more than most.
Right?
But, so I was on there, and she it was so funny, but she was saying, I remember when I was reading book 1, and my mom called me into the room, and then she said to her mom, she goes, "Okay, well, I've got to get back to the movie." And she goes, "I mean the book." And so it was really cool. But, yeah, so we're in the development stages now. I'm very excited. I'm meeting with one of the producers Saturday to go over what would be called a web deck. And it's as we're starting putting things together as far as potential directors, actors, and a lot of the information of a movie. So if all goes well, we would be in pre-production spring of next year. And then actual production, the filming of it next fall. So like almost this time next year. Ideally in England, and I'm hoping that we can do at least 60 to 80% of the filming in England, and then probably some other filming in Eastern Europe. It's kind of how films are done. But I would love that it would be exclusively in England. So we'll see. And then if all goes well, it will be released in the summer, if not the winter of 2023. It's really a Christmas movie. Because book 1 takes place in December, and it ends at Christmas, which is great. If you remember Dover, and it really is that type of family movie, that family Christmas movie. So I think that would be realistic. It's almost 2 years from now that it would be released in theaters. We're anticipating that it will actually be one of the most successful films in cinematic history for a lot of reasons, just from research analytics. Gauging the market. I mean, right now you're dealing with a market that is starving for good content.
Oh, it is.
They're starving for family friendly. They're sick and tired of the agendas. They're sick and tired of the compromises, the demigods, the witchcraft, all this other crap. And Britfield has none of it. You know what I mean? It's a straight shooter, and it's just a great story. So.
And it's very engaging. Usually some of these assignments I give myself, especially if I'm doing an interview, are laborious, but it was really a fun read. I had an excuse to sit out by the pool and read.
I love it.
With the fan on, because it is warm out there. But yeah. Oh gosh. Well, friend, it was wonderful getting to know you, getting to hear your heart, and hopefully at some point you'll come back when you've got maybe a movie completed. That would be fun to hear about, some of the behind the scenes and what went on.
Can't wait for that. Yeah, can't wait for that. Yeah.
How involved are you going to be? I mean, it sounds like you probably have a spreadsheet with every second of your time occupied. Do you have time to or is this fun for you?
No, and it's kind of always been the big picture, the movie and the film, and part of it is because it's really like written, as you said, you read it and it's visual, and you feel like you're there, and a lot of that's not by accident. And again, too, I came at it from a script background, so I was used to structuring things for a movie, and so when that's how these books are structured in many ways, with your plot points, your midpoint, the action, the way the scenes flow and they read. But my involvement will be I'll be semi-involved. I've got a team that's going to be handling the aspects of it, which is really the overview There'll be it'll be produced by a major studio, and so they'll handle quite a bit of it. But with that said, we'll have some say and some. We'll have all the say we want to until it's signed off, if you will.
Right.
But no, it won't have much involvement. I'll be involved as one of the script writers, but I won't be the script writer. I don't want to, because
you have to finish some other books here before
that too. But there's phenomenal script writers out there that do this for a living every day.
Right.
And so you know what I mean. So, but I'll be involved in it. That goes without saying. I'll be an executive producer on it. I've got someone who I'm meeting with who'll be one of the producers. So he's kind of my on location. If he'll be in England for 6 months where they're shooting it. He'll be going to the studios and talking and negotiating. He'll be doing all of that, so I don't have to per se. And I don't really want to. And don't get me wrong, I want to be part of it. You know what I mean? I think it'll be a lot of fun. I'll definitely be on the sets for a week here and a week there. Maybe I'll be in England while it's being filmed, writing book 4. So I don't know, but I won't have that kind of hands-on. I obviously won't be directing it. I won't be writing it. I wouldn't be acting in it. Although I think it would be cool for like one bit part to have me in it. You
can do a cameo. I think
that's what I was thinking.
Yeah, something like I'm not big on this. My kids like the superhero movies, the older ones, and I guess one of the writers. I guess I don't know. I don't watch.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, he does like a little cameo, like he's in the audience or he's somewhere where he just pops up. I'll have to get his name and what the series is. My kids, I listen, but I don't always remember. But his face pops up.
There's the scene, when they're at Oxford getting tickets, and there's that grumpy old ticket guy. And I thought that would be really fun if I'm in makeup, you know what I mean? And I'm like, how many? Where to? That's the price. You know what I mean? And it's like, and you wouldn't really know it's me, but it's like, it's that inside people. It's like, oh my gosh, that's the author and stuff. So something like that would be cool, where you'd have that Hitchcock-esque, where it's like I'm in the background watching, or something like, oh, that's him. So
you'll have to write that in your contract, make sure. Okay.
Yeah.
We are out of time. So it has been delightful. And friends, you can find more about Chad Stewart and his series at Britfield.com, as well as the BritfieldInstitute.org. And we'll have all of this on our show note link. And that is... I wanted
to say one thing real quick. Sure. I'm sorry. And I forgot to bring it up, but it's kind of exciting. And you're actually the first show to announce it on. But we're now in development, turning Britfield and Lost Crown into a 3-act play with musical aspects of it. It's not a musical, but it should be done by the end of this year, and it's going to be going out. We're going to be piloting it at a couple of middle schools in the spring, and then getting it out to hopefully hundreds of thousands of schools across the nation, and that they could actually produce and put on the Britfield play as a 3-act play.
Very cool. That was a brilliant idea. I'm really impressed. Very good. Yeah. Because that's another thing that people need good content. So I think that's wonderful. Yeah. You keep coming up with ideas, Chad. You're not going to have any downtime at all. So hopefully this is all still fun for you and you're enjoying it. And it sounds like it's a great thing.
It is.
So, well, thanks so much for coming on with me.
You're welcome. Thank you so much for having me.
Be sure to share this episode with a friend and to give us a star rating. Go to your favorite podcast app, as well as subscribe to this channel, Vintage Homeschool Moms. And friends, again, I want to give a shout out to our sponsor, and that is the new movie, Courageous Legacy. Find out more information at courageousthemovie.com. Take care, everybody. God bless, and I will talk to you soon. Bye-bye.
Thanks for tuning in to the Vintage Homeschool Mom Show. Visit Felice at MediaAngels.com and TheVintageHomeschoolMoms.com. Vintage Homeschool Moms is a production of the Ultimate Homeschool Radio Network.